because I come at 5:30, I didn't want to take a half hour of me getting organized, so I shut it off. So, yeah, try to remind me. I'll probably get it after tonight. So so the new students, who's new to City College? Anybody? Okay, Adair, this is your first semester here. And anybody else? Oh, Zach, okay. So have you in some other place or in any of your, well, you haven't had any other classes, have you? Today's Monday. You could have had some during the day. Have you ever used Zoom before like this? Oh, okay. So it's, it's the same link every week. And in case you forget it, it's also in the, what's our, what's our platform called? Canvas.
Canvas.
Yeah, we've had so many platforms over the years. I can never remember what the latest name is. Yeah, so then we have a Canvas platform that we'll do the course with. Now, has anybody not used Canvas before? Zach and Adair, you've used it? Oh, okay, so it's pretty simple. So I'll go through it, and also to remind the people who've had it but may not remember it. Jack, have you ever done any stuff on Canvas? Jack Flores? See, this is another reason I like to see your face. So when you're not there, I won't ask you a question. Okay, so I'm gonna start with I'm gonna project on my screen my pipeline account. We're going to start there, and then we're going to go to Canvas, and we're going to walk you to getting to Canvas, and then we'll talk about the various things that are on Canvas, okay? That's it. Since you know Zoom, this is where we need to start. So just hang in there while I set that up. Okay, now does everybody see this pipeline page?
Yep. Yes.
So that's good. I need everyone to say yes when I ask those questions, because I can't see you. I just have my thing on the screen. So that's good. So everybody knows how to get to their pipeline page, correct?
Yeah.
And then at the top of pipeline, there's a little row here of tools, and there's a canvas. You see the canvas? Can you see my red cursor?
Yeah, we see it.
Purple cursor?
Yep.
Yeah, so you just hit that. Oh yeah, okay. And then you go to this dashboard for Canvas, and it has all the classes that I have published. I'm only teaching this one this semester, so it's the only one. And then it's CT124, and that's the section number. So you just click on that, and it'll take you to the home page. And the home page has a welcome. You can read that. And then it has Monday 6 to 9 on Zoom at the top. That's the section number in case you need it. Also has the Zoom link here. So if you lose it everywhere else, you can find it here. So then let's go to announcements. That is, there's none. But what I'm going to do is when I record each session, which I will do, is it still recording, I hope?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When I get done, I have to stay up late and record it, and I'm going to put it on this announcement page. So if you happen to miss because you work late or you're sick or whatever, you can get it the next day. Usually I'll have it if I don't get it that night because I went out and got drunk and couldn't finish it. I'll at least have it by noon the next day, Tuesday. So if you miss it, you can always review it Tuesday through Saturday and get ready for the next Monday. Yeah?
Sounds good.
Okay, and then we go to syllabus. And I believe I sent you a syllabus. Is that right?
Yes.
You did. I sent you in the mail so you could just print it and have it, and you wouldn't have to always go into Canvas to get it. Sometimes it's more convenient. So, but we'll go over it, the one that's on here. Again, it has the Zoom link for you. It has my email address, and it has my cell phone number. So if there's any reason you have to get a hold of me, an emergency or any reason you want to set up a office hour, special office hours, because you have a problem or something you need to discuss, call me there, we'll set it up. Office hours are, I'm going to come every day at 5:30. And other people will probably come in early. Sometimes people get off of work and they have nothing to do. I can't believe they would get on the Zoom early rather than just stare at the sky, but everybody has their preferences. But so if you want to be private when you talk to me, that won't be private because it'll be the Zoom and other people may be on it. If it's not a matter that you think is private, then you can just talk. Otherwise, we'll make a time when you can, you know, we can do a Zoom person to person at some later time. I eliminated the class from this textbook, which you like. It was a flip, one of those little Saturn flip books. And they used to be like 18 bucks. And now they're like, what do we say? They're like 50 bucks. And I had copied all the relevant stuff out of it for a class earlier. So I just said, well, hell, I'll just use all those copies, you know, and you won't have to buy the book. So there's no text for this class.
Hey, Patrick, what book is it, though? Just out of curiosity.
I'll show you the face of it in a second.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So participation. That I want you to participate. So that's going to be part of your grade. Probably not a third, but part of your grade. Usually, if you take the midterm and the final, and then you're like in between an A and a B, you know, numerically, if you've been showing up in class and asking questions, then I usually flip you to the higher one. So it helps to participate. And you don't need to participate much. Mostly, if you just ask questions about stuff you didn't know or didn't hear, that would be enough. Everybody can do that, right? And then if you have something to share, like you might contest something I'm saying, or you might have heard something different, well, certainly chime in and let's get at what's correct, because I'm not always right. So it's pretty simple to participate. Then there's some other things to do. There's three things: participation, the test, and then there's some other things to do each week. And I'll show you those when we get to the modules. This just tells about what the class is, but we're gonna look at that. The school just has to put these down. I had to customize it a little bit because some of the things were things you had to do in person. So don't pay much attention to that. Does everybody, most of you know what SLO, student learning outcomes, are? And they, at the end of the year, there's a page for each of you. And I have to grade you on these 5, or rather assess you on these 5 SLOs. And it has nothing to do with your grade or anything to do with you as a student. It's feedback from me to see how well you understood the class. So if there's a certain thing there, like being able to perform the diagnostic test, say the blower door, and I asked you guys to name parts of the blower door, which is, we're gonna have to do something like that. And nobody was able to do it. Well, then I would realize that, geez, I didn't teach that very well. If nobody could, that's pretty simple. So then I'll go back the next time I do it and make sure I embellish that particular lesson. So this stuff's mainly for the teacher, but you know, we want to tell you what it is. Here, evaluation, class exams, participation, and there's a discussion thing, and there's homework assignments and journaling and participation in the class. And I'll explain all that stuff in a second. So that the exams will have a grade, and I prep everyone the class before the exam on what it's going to be about and where to find the information, as those of you have had me know. And then the participation will just be, if you do it some, you get an A. If you don't do it at all, you probably get a C. And again, that won't be factored in numerically. It'll just be, if you're on that borderline, it'll push you one or another. Oh, non-existent is F, yeah. Okay, so student-teacher relationship. Teachers nowadays are also counselors, right? So, because if you have problems, like personal problems, like home issues or a relationship problem, or, you're going through a psychological, you're depressed or you're suicidal or God knows what, right? The way the world's going today, all those things are not unusual. The school has counselors for all kinds of help, and you can also come to me and say, can I talk to you about something? And we'll get a Zoom, and you and I will go through something, because you may just need to talk to a responsible adult at some point. And I've lived long enough, I can usually give pretty good advice. I've been through a lot of therapy too, so I'm pretty whacked out that way. So, and also, if something comes up that you need to drop the class, either you don't like it or your work schedule changes, make sure you talk it over with me first, because in terms of work schedule, like this class, we could have you just do the Zooms if that's the only way you could do it. So let me try to figure out a way to continue in it. And if I can't, then I'll say, yeah, go ahead and drop. There's nothing we can do. But people drop without even talking to the teacher, and sometimes you can actually solve the problem. And then if anybody has disabilities, read through this and know that we're totally supportive of any kind of disability. The only ones I've seen in my 15 years of teaching here in construction have been, what do you call it? When you can't focus on things. What's that called? Some of you probably have.
ADD?
ADD, and there's another one, ADSD or whatever they call it. Yeah, that's often the only one I get. And what they usually do for that, if you go to the health officer, the DSPS, right, probably, they will say, well, you take this petition to the teacher and he will give you more time for your exams. That's one of the ways they help.
They don't give you pills?
Well, you ask them, never know. It's worth a try. So, but since I know they do that, that's one of the things they do. Our tests take up the whole class period of that period, from 6 to and I usually extend it to 10. So you have 4 hours, and the tests are usually from a 20-minute to an hour test. That's usually when most people finish. Some people they want to go over and over it. They're really obsessive, and that's fine too. But, the usual straight through run is from, 20 minutes to an hour. So 4 hours is plenty of time. If you have another aspect to your disability that requires some other kind of support, just let me know. Call me on my phone, so it'll be private, and we'll figure out how to deal with it. Okay. But this relationship thing is really important. When we do these classes, because we don't see people in person, you can tell a lot from when people, they have to get to class, so they have to drive, they have to be sober. We get a sense of what they're like that night. But when it's online, you can't tell anything about what a student's going through. So they've come up with all these support ideas to help us have more contact with the students and help them with any problems that are getting in the way of their learning. So, and I'm fine with that. I always want to help. So this pandemic is driving everybody crazy. And sometimes we need to talk to someone, or we have a specific problem we have to get solved. So make sure you call me, as well as the support you get on the campus. The SBCC has always had great counseling support in various dimensions. So take advantage of it. It's free. Okay, any questions about the syllabus? God, that was pretty involved, huh? Sorry, I have to do it. Can you guys see me?
Mhm.
You can? There's a little side box. See, I can minimize mine and then that's not it. Whoop. Get out of here. What did I do? Anyway, okay. So let's move on in the Canvas shell. We did syllabus. The only other one is modules, because the assignments are in the modules and the discussion is in the module, so you don't even need to go to those. And when the tests come around, you have to use quiz. But that's all of that we use in this whole row here. So let's go to modules. So you guys can see this, right?
Mhm.
And does yours start with welcome, begin here? Course overview about your instructor on the module page. God, you guys are asleep already? First night, half hour into the show?
Yeah, it starts with yeah, that's what it starts with the welcome begin here.
Okay, because I have a whole thing that says instructors only do not publish, which I didn't, but I just have to make sure that this thing's working. Okay, great. So let's see what course overview said. It's probably pretty boring. Yeah, read that on your own. Yeah, read that tonight. And then there's about your instructor. Let's see what's under there. Oh, yeah. So I'll read this to you so you don't have to. So I've been a carpenter or a general contractor. I started as a carpenter, obviously, since 1972. So I got my contractor's license in, I don't know, 76 or 77. I've let it lapse because I haven't always done carpentry, and they make you pay this huge fee to keep it going. But I've worked in various states around the states and out of the country. So I have a lot of experience on how how things are done differently. 75% of buildings the same, but there's variations on top of that. And I'll mention some of those if they're relevant as we go. And I've been a teacher most of that same time. I go back and forth between teaching and building. And then this job came where I could combine them in 2006. So I set up this program one class at a time from 2006 to the present. And I retired 2 or 3 years ago, but they didn't replace me as a full-time faculty, and we need a chair. So we've been on temporary chair, which is okay, but not as good because they haven't been able to afford to replace. So this year I'm really gonna, Mike Ganella, the temporary chair, and I are really gonna try to get a full-time position. And then we'll finally replace me and we'll have someone. We've actually interviewed a guy that's pretty good that we like. So if we get the position and he still wants to come, we'll be in business. That'd be great.
Is that the tiny house guy?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. What was his name?
Wasn't it Daniel something?
Daniel Bell. Thank you. Yeah.
You have to appease the board to get that to go through.
What's that? Oh, well, no, there's always more full-time teachers than we have budget for. And so usually the academic teachers get it because the school's prejudiced against, career technical education. And you can tell anybody I said that. I've had to fight for us to get equal treatment. You know, we're over here at Wake, and they spend more of their energy on the transfer program at main campus. But
Yeah, that
this
board
is
is brutal.
this is really important. And I mean, I've thrown myself into this battle for years, and so we'll see. But we just got what, $20 million from Bezos's wife. Can you believe it? The guy who just went to the outer space or inner space. No,
City
outer space.
College did?
Yeah. She was looking
Whoa.
around for someone to contribute to, and somehow, I don't know what her connection was to City College. Maybe she just looked in the phone book and closed her eyes and stabbed. And well, they get a tax write-off, right? The less money they have. So
I think she's from here, Patrick. I think
maybe
her last name-
there
her
might be a
last- Her
connection.
maiden name's like Stork or something like that.
Yeah, well, maybe she is. Yeah.
Like the Stork Tower, Glen Annie Stork Road.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. So, but that's great. And we've been suffering under $3.5 million deficit for the last 3 or 4 years, which is why we've been tight. But that should blow that deficit and then give us a lot of extra money for things like a full-time construction technology teacher. I'm hoping. If the Senate doesn't give it to me, I'm going to raise hell. I went to the president of the college, Goswami, the last president, because he'd done construction. I had him come to the Wake Center. I explained our plight. I said, I'm really counting on you to support me in this. He said, he never commits, but he said, well, okay, I've heard you. That's good. And then the guy gets fired, or I guess he quits, but damn. Can't win for losing in this place.
It's the board right now. It's gnarly. Don't go up against them.
I know.
They'll slaughter you.
Yeah. So, I've been on the Senate because when I was chair, I had to do Senate duties occasionally. So I know some of the people, they stay on there forever. It's a real power hungry thing. And so I'm hoping they'll remember me with kindness, and Mike and I will go in there and, present our case. But if they don't do it, if they don't rank us, I'm going to really raise hell because I have nothing to lose. And I'm really going to raise hell. They don't want to cross me either. I'm really nasty. Okay. So the module tells you what week by week, there's 16 weeks. And the dates there. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Okay. Then it has the topic, the presentation, what it's going to be about. Usually that'll be all. You don't need to go into it. But tonight, because you didn't have time before class to read, I don't like to do that. To prepare for this class, I have the handout there, but usually it'll just be what's on here. Then the group discussion is a blog, and usually I won't put a topic in until after the lesson, because then I'll get a sense of what I didn't explain well or what you guys questioned a lot, and then I'll sort of connect that to something about the lesson. So they're all blank until the night that I do it. This one I did because.
Excuse me?
This one I actually gave a topic, and it was just to ask each other for anything you didn't understand and see if your classmates can help you understand it. You may not have anything. But on this blog, which every week you're required to do, you can reply. You don't have to do much, and you can answer, each of you can answer directly to the blog, like answer the question or comment on the topic, or you can read what someone right before you said, or the 5 people before you said, and disagree or agree or comment on what they said. So this is just a way we do a roundtable discussion when you are online and nobody's around. So you can do it either way. And you can just write a sentence or two, or you can, go into it. I don't care. And I'm going to periodically be looking at these. Well, no, these I'll read every week because I need to know where if I didn't get something across in a lesson, or there's places, gaps that you guys need, I'll fill it. The next one I won't read. So, okay, so presentation tells you what it's going to be. Tonight's introduction to building performance, or introduction to class, that's what we're on. Then we'll talk about building performance, and we'll look at that first handout. Then tomorrow, wait till Tuesday to do the group discussion. That'll give me a little time to think about it and put it on. And then there's an individual assignment. So let's look at this week's assignment. So I put all the handouts. So was it Mike that asked about the book? Or Alex, somebody?
It was me.
It was me. Great. Who's that?
It was Lewis.
Lewis. Okay. Okay. I know your voices some of the time, but through a computer, it changes some of you. This isn't the one. It's the same series. I'll show you in a minute the one. But for next week, you can just read the stuff I have on here. And, there's some stuff that I wrote, and then it's on audits. And I used to have a whole class on audit where we used that book. Saturn has a whole series, and one was on energy audit. And occasionally I use it for this class, but it didn't have the other stuff. So I stopped using it for this one. But I've used, for the audit, I've used a lot of the content of that book. And then we've made audits over the years. So we'll go through what a typical audit might look like. So this will be for next week. So scan through this, read the stuff you can read. This stuff, obviously, you don't need to read everything. Just kind of get an idea of what that's about, and then we'll go through it next week. And occasionally, usually the assignment will have just a reading assignment. Occasionally, there may be some questions, from the assignment, like 5 questions at the most. But often it's just reading. And then journal. So this first night, I have actually some information about the journal. So what I want you guys to write an entry. And there's many reasons for that. One is that a lot of you don't write much anymore. You've got cell phones and computers, and you don't actually write or sketch or draw figures or doodle. And I think all those things are important for construction and for just normal human activities. So I want you to jot down things, but I'm not restricting it to hardly anything. I'm not going to grade it. In fact, I'm not even going to read it. I'm just going to read periodically. I'll look and see if you've done it, but I'm not going to read it. It's treated as a personal journal. And so also it'll help you take any ideas that are in your head and put them on paper, articulate them. That's an important skill. And you can always use practice in that. And some of the things you can do is, like, say I mentioned a tool and you go, oh, that's really cool, I should get one of those. Then you write down the tool, go to Buena Tool and look for a cordless, nail gun. And then there might be a process or some way of doing things that you see in either the videos or my talking or on the, so just jot down those kind of things about construction. And then you might think a lesson was horrible and the teacher's a real jerk. You can write that in there. More likely, you'll think the lesson was really wise and your teacher's a saint, but I'm not going to try to convince you either way. And then you might have something about the YouTube, like that was a crappiest YouTube. I couldn't understand a word of it, or wow, where'd you get that YouTube? It was really great. So it's just practice putting ideas in on the writing, okay? Well, actually, you're not writing here either, you're typing, but it's closer to writing because it's just, you're making it up. Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we write philosophical thoughts in it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, anything. Just I want you to get thoughts on paper. So yeah. I do all my journals, they're half philosophical and half carpentry and half art doodles. So I do them all on one thing. It makes the journals really trippy. So, but they don't have to be impressive. If you've never done a journal and it's kind of awkward, just do the minimum. I'm not worried about that. So we go, every week's the same thing. I give a presentation, we have a discussion. You have a discussion among yourselves, a little blog. You do the assignment, reading, occasionally questions, and then do just some journaling that week. Pretty simple. Before the test, we have a prep for the test. There's no homework assignment that week because you're going to study for the test. And it's pretty straightforward. There's just a midterm and a final. So don't forget the third week of class. And if you check this, you should check this or the sequence I sent you in the email, for your class schedule. Notice that the third week's a holiday. That Monday's Memorial Day. So you don't come to school, you don't Zoom. You could journal, but nothing else. Okay, got that? And I'll give you this assignment here. Since we're not meeting, I'm giving you this assignment for the week after, the week when you come back. Okay. So any questions about this Canvas activity? There is something. Oh yeah. I think that course resources is not now operating. Oh no, here it is, overview. So there's some additional things about Canvas in this link here, and a Canvas student guide, more stuff. So if you're new with Canvas and something's throwing you for a loop, look over these things and see if they'll answer. Otherwise, wait for the class and ask me, or email me and ask me. Yeah? It's a pretty simple program, so I think you'll be okay with it. Okay, so let's put that down. Oh no. Did I even write a lesson plan? Probably not. So let's go back to that. Can you see it now or no? Can you see the Canvas platform?
No, we can't see
Okay,
it.
okay. I got to go back and get it. What do I do? Oh, yeah. I forgot I put the, I told you about it and then I forgot. What did I forget? Does anybody remember?
How to share their screen.
I love students. No, close. Remember the handout, because I didn't give you ahead of time. So we'll just do it live. And that means we go here. And that means we go here and here. Okay. You can all see that, right?
Yep.
So Louis, this is the book here. Saturn's the publisher. Saturn Building Shell Field Guide.
Are they still publishing stuff?
Yeah.
Or is this kind of an old?
Yeah,
company?
and sometimes they have these used on Amazon, and if you can't find them there, you can actually go to the publisher. I don't know if they have used ones, but their new price is about the same everywhere. It's gone up. They're handy little guides. They haven't redone them I've used it since the beginning of this class. And a lot of the stuff's still relevant. Some of it's not. And so I always supplement it with stuff. So let's go to, oh yeah, I'll go to it. I couldn't get these to go in order for some weird reason. Every other module worked, but this one kept going in. Okay, let's start with weatherization. And we're just going to go through these things and then we have a film. What time is it? 6:44. Oh my God. So can you read that or shall I make that bigger? What do you think? And can I make it bigger?
You can just barely read it. It's just kind of small.
Okay, I'll read it. I'll read it while we're. So weatherization or weatherproofing is the way the British say it, is the practice of protecting a building and its interior from the elements, particularly from sunlight, precipitation, wind, and of, okay, here's the and of modifying a building to reduce energy consumption and organize energy efficiency. So they could have included that under weatherization by saying cold and heat are weather aspects, right? And so you need it, so you're going to have energy use to deal with cold and heat. But they decided to make it a second category. So that's pretty close to what building performance is. But you'll see the slight differences when we go. So weatherization is distinct from building insulation because it's more than insulation. There's air tightness and all kinds of things. In the United States, buildings use 1/3 of all energy consumed and 2/3 of all electricity. Now they never say here, does that mean when it's being built or when they operate? And it makes a big difference. Just take that with a grain of salt. But buildings do use, and when they're being built, they use a lot of energy and a lot of electricity. So buildings took a second place to vehicles. We've been obsessing about energy efficiency in automobiles for a lot longer than buildings. Finally, buildings caught on, even though they use much more of the energy of our total energy used in cars. But now that we've figured it out, we've been going blasters for the last 20 or 30 years. And so we're going to summarize and bring you up to date with all those things that we've done to weatherize and make houses perform better. Air quality. So, you have to kind of stretch the definition to include all the things that green building includes. So most people don't bother with it. They just go on to building performance. And anyway, let's look at, this is something I did when I called the class weatherization 10 years ago. This was the first day handout, and it's kind of fun to go over. Okay, so you guys help me out. Precipitation, what kind of precipitation do we have in Santa Barbara?
None.
I mean,
Fog.
that was funny.
Green
We do
layer.
have rain. We have very little rain, but that was good. Who said that? Was that Lewis?
I don't know who said it.
It was Smart Alex.
Smart Alex, such a cynic. But it is true. So we do have rain. Actually, we have heavy rain for little short periods of time. So we have rain. We do have fog, which makes a difference. And we have snow in the hills, but not down in the flats too much. Do we have wind?
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about the county and not just the city of Santa Barbara, my God, Lompoc and Santa Maria really get hit with wind. Anybody in the class from North County?
I am.
Who said that?
Miguel.
Miguel, yeah. So it's windy up there, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much every day after 1 or 2 o'clock it gets pretty.
That's windy. We have little ocean breezes, but we really don't call it wind. It's pretty nothing down here. Everybody's got the sun, and you would wonder, well, the sun's pretty innocent. Well, no, it's not actually. It bakes decking, bends decking. Sun actually, and the sun here is intense enough. It actually does a number on wood. So it's something we have to deal with. Extreme temperatures. We don't get too much. North County gets more especially in the San Ynez Valley. They'll get colder and hotter temperatures. Ambient air, I don't know why I put that there anyway. Oh, negative effects of weather, water damage. Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems with buildings is one of the biggest callbacks is repairing water damage. So for all kinds of reasons, whether it's plumbing errors or not keeping the water away from your house properly. So that really, and it can cause, mildew and mold and stuff. So water damage is a problem. Wind pressure, the wind blows against a wall. It blows the warm air out the other side of out the wall opposite. So wind pressure we have to deal with. UV rays through our windows, they overheat the house. They, what do you call it? What do they do to carpets? They, what's the word? Fade. You guys ever use that word fade?
Hmm.
You guys ever buy carpets? Young men don't buy carpets until they get older. But UV rays will discolor a carpet, take the color out of it. Yeah. So they can be damaging and they do overheat. It's not actually the UV rays that overheat, it's the infrared rays, but loss of heat, and then excess heat, and then health issues. What health issues are weather caused?
Skin cancer?
What's that?
Skin cancer?
Yeah. Okay. Since we've been talking about UV, yeah, especially if you're sitting by your favorite window and the UV comes in, you can get skin cancer if you're not covered. You can breathe mold if there's water in the walls, right? And that's a health issue. Come on, you guys, what other ones? What happens when you get too cold?
Get hypothermia,
Well, yeah, you probably won't get that far, although you could, but
or you just get sick.
you can get sick because you've got an equilibrium, and if your body gets too hot or cold, sometimes it'll mess with your immune system and you'll get a cold or something. So yeah. And then also there's air you breathe, there's toxins in the house. That's not, well, that's weather because sometimes the wind blows those toxins inside. And then secondary incomes, all those things have an impact on, the worth of your property and your comfort. So it's a huge part of making your house perform is making sure it deals with the weather in your particular area. So why is weatherization a new topic? Well, the Department of Energy had, like I said, it's concerned with energy conservation and helping low income and poor people and aged people. Because, old people get out of it sometimes and they're not aware that they can do something to stop drafts in their house or whatever. I did a program in Maine once, in Brunswick, Maine, where I lived. And there were a lot of old people, French Canadians, happened to be in this town. They were one of the minority groups and they were really old and they would freeze. They'd get really cold. And they, if they couldn't get heating oil, everybody heats with heating oil there, the old school types, they would sometimes freeze to death. So, it was really important to get into those communities, make sure everybody knew what was available. And, yeah, old people need a lot of help. They get, they get senile and they get confused and they don't do everything they need to do to stay alive, unfortunately. Then we got building science came up. Building science is just regular science applied to building issues. And that just became big and I'll go into why that happened. And then it just started, everybody got really excited about it. Well, yeah, let's get more science in here and get more technical answers. So that impacted, and then that turned weatherization into building performance over time. Okay. Building science. You read that on your own. It's just science that is obviously just focused on issues having to do with building. But there are a lot of issues. This is a weatherization, free home weatherization locally. Our energy efficiency services are free to qualified homes and eligible households. Make your home more energy efficient, conserve energy, and reduce your utility bills. Services provided are based on your household assessment and may include some or all of the following. They may look at your doors and see that the weather stripping's gone or not helping. You know, a lot of air comes in through the leaky doors. So they may caulk up holes in siding and stuff. Make sure you have a carbon monoxide. These are the things that the government programs focus on. Make sure you have a CO alarm, smoke alarm. They may test gas appliances. Hot water heater blankets. Make sure hot water heater is insulated. Make sure all your heaters and furnaces are working right, because they can produce carbon monoxide and cause fires and things if you don't deal with them right. Make sure they have low flow shower heads and faucet aerators and furnace filters. So they kind of come in and they have package deals. If you're in cold climates, they may have a few extra things. This is, I mean, mid-coast is pretty benign climate, but call us today. Community Action Commission, CAC of Santa Barbara. It's a nonprofit. It's on Hollister, and these are the numbers, and they'll fix you right up. So it's still going on. It's great. So you know, it's the same old thing. Now, how do I get rid? How do I put this strip somewhere else? Everybody, on the top, that toolbar.
What are you talking
Can I?
about?
Oh, I can just drag it. Okay.
Yeah, I think you can just drag it around.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Because I couldn't get to my X. Why you want to get to your X is another question, but I couldn't get to her. Okay. So what I'm looking for is to make this bigger. Anybody see any? You know, every year I ask you guys about this. Making this bigger. No ideas?
The handouts or the whole?
Yeah, the handout. Well, because I'll have them every week.
Do you have like a zoom option?
No, that's just it. I don't.
Remember in blueprint reading you used files, the files option. I think
Yeah.
that was good for you, and then you were able to zoom in on the
mean-
files.
Because I have everything stored in the files.
Yeah.
I think they might have been files.
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know if
No,
if
let's see what look what they do. They put all the files you've ever used in alphabetical order. So I could go through there and sort them, but no, but thanks. That's one thing I might work on. But there's another thing I can do. And that is I've got them on my desktop. I think. With any luck.
Patrick, it looks like these field guides are pretty affordable on Saturn's website.
Really? What do they charge?
For the first one that you had on there, the energy auditor one, it's only $35, and then the building shell one's $39.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
then
for a textbook, that's not bad.
they have a weatherization one for $49 too.
I've never seen that one. I mean, they're pretty good. They have a lot of information that we skip because it's too involved. So I took just the stuff that's most useful.
So you're just using the two that you showed us, the building shell and the energy
Yeah.
auditor.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's weird is oh, I know what I did. I know what it is. I'm in the wrong place. I know what it is. No. No. Huh. Okay, just give me another couple of minutes. If I don't solve it, we'll.
Hey, Dylan. Dylan, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, man.
I was on cam.
You ever use the DeWalt battery powered pressure washer before?
I have a battery operated one. Yeah,
The
doesn't have much power.
550 psi. You think it doesn't have enough power?
It worked when I used it. I mean, I was spraying chalk off the side of a cabin, but
Would it work on spray paint?
possibly.
I saw the forest crews like in Los Padres. That's what they use. And in our garden, we've just gotten just graffiti to all hell since COVID started. So I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if that would do the trick or if I need something gas powered.
They also sell electric one at Home Depot, so they sell them both at Home Depot. You can buy the battery operated one, and then a corded one. The nice thing about the battery operated one is you can just have a 5-gallon bucket. There's a hose attachment that comes with it. You put in the 5-gallon bucket and it sprays
Right.
out. And then there's also a hose attachment that you put on a hose, and it's a quick connect thing like an air compressor. It just
that's
clicks in
cool.
and it's really nice. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't want too much pressure because I don't want to like strip the bark off of this oak tree, but I want it enough to take the spray paint off. That's kind of
Oh yeah, it should probably handle that
yeah. Okay.
battery operated one.
Cool. Thanks, man. Anybody built a worm bin before? I'm just gonna keep going and they'll pass.
No, it's great. That's great. I appreciate it.
I gotta build a really big multi-chambered worm bin for this garden. I don't know if anybody's built one or has any ideas, but open to suggestions.
Multi-chamber worm bin?
Yeah, so the food pantry gets food donated from like grocery stores and stuff pretty much every week consistently, and the food is it'll be like a pallet of bananas or like overstock stuff that they get, so they can really only distribute so much, and then the other half kind of goes bad. So we're, in addition to having like a compost pile, we're gonna have a worm bin. And the thought process behind it being multi-chambered is that you can fill up one side like a week or 2 weeks or however long it takes to fill it up, and then you can fill up the other side while that's kind of being processed by the worms.
Nice.
And then the only thing is like you need to somehow collect the castings underneath, so it needs to somehow be like a raised up screened or have like slats at the bottom or something so that the material doesn't all fall through, but you can somehow scrape the castings out and collect it at the bottom.
Go on Pinterest. I'm sure someone has something on Pinterest about it.
Probably.
I'm just Googling it and there's a ton of pictures. It looks like people layer kind of like plastic storage containers. But I see some wood ones too.
Are you talking about just like the plastic, like milk crates?
No, I'm talking about those like plastic, those like sturdy plastic storage containers that you see
Oh, the
like Ace.
tubs.
Yeah, the tubs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we want to do something like wooden.
Mhm.
My
Yeah, there's
boss
just-
explicitly said no plastic tubs,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
So can you see this screen? It says building shell basics.
Yeah.
Everybody?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so here's something. I forgot to mention it. What would be great is if you all had a pencil and paper or pen and paper to write down things. I know you guys like to put them in your phones, some of you, but it's faster if you just write them. But this word building shell or shell is a word that's used a lot in architecture and construction. And it just means the outside frame of the wall, you know, the walls and the ceiling and the roof. It's like a shell that covers the building. So they'll use that a lot. So you need to know what that means. And this name of this book that I got this from is Building Shell Basics. So it's building performance, but they just happen to call it Building Shell Basics because the way they look at performance is by the things that have to do with that the building shell deals with. So basics of comfort. Of course, this doesn't have a, see, the problem with this is now I have to go. Oh, great. Okay. We're just going to go through this real fast. This is like the first chapter of that flip book. And they talk about temperature, obviously. And they talk about relative humidity. Humidity is something else. You can actually get sick if you're staying in too humid of an environment. So shell, enclosure, and envelope. These terms are interchangeable. Sometimes they call it a building envelope. Sometimes they call it a shell. You don't hear enclosure too much, but then they have a little subunit on thermal flaws in the building, inadequate thermal resistance, excessive air leakage, lack of shade. We'll look at all those in much detail. So, and then they talk about thermal boundary, which I think is a little overblown and too conceptual. We'll talk about it a little bit. Because when they're trying to keep air in, you want to know how much of the house you want to heat and keep tight, and other areas you can let go. Then, of course, we'll do a whole thing on insulation. That's really come of age. Then air leakage and air sealing. What forces drive air leakage? There's a lot of forces like wind that go in, that put the air in your house, that pressurize it because they're driving in. And the air always has to go somewhere and it has different routes it goes. And so you have to learn about all those, deal with them. Then there's ventilation is a huge topic. As we've learned to tighten houses, we've tightened the shell so it doesn't leak as much. Then everything we begin to the shell, like crappy furniture that's got a lot of toxins in it, becomes part of your air. It doesn't go out naturally. So ventilation's become a lot more important. And so we have to deal with that. Air sealing to keep the treated air you've either cooled or warmed from leaving quickly. And then shading and reflecting sun is important for hot areas. So that's kind of how this book approaches it. If you look at the presentation name of all the modules in your Canvas, remember we just sort of looked at it. But if you want to know all the stuff we're studying, you just look at the titles of each thing. When we first started thinking about saving energy in the house, we started thinking about making the houses more tight. So air will leak out of a house. You know, the walls have siding or stucco on the outside. In Santa Barbara, we usually build stick frame with studs, insulation, baths, fiberglass in the wall, sheetrock on the inside, sheetrock's taped, we paint the room. That's our line of defense for losing air. And the air in Santa Barbara doesn't take much to heat. Do we have the heater on much during the year here? No, unless you live in North County, probably a little more, or Ojai or some of those places. So we're not too worried about leakage, but if you go anywhere else in the country, leakage is really important because you're paying money to utility companies to heat or cool that air. And if it's leaking out of your house from big gaps and holes, you're just throwing that money away. And your house isn't comfortable anymore. It's not cooling you off enough or heating you up enough. So in the Environmental Protection Agency, after it got started in the 60s, they started spinning off areas that they were going to address. So they obviously address environmental problems like toxins in the rivers and bad air quality and all that kind of stuff. And then they started looking at structures at homes. And they created a thing called Energy Star. Have you ever seen Energy Star labels in appliances? You go buy an appliance anywhere, Costco, Sears, and they'll have a label that say Energy Star approved. And they're usually a little better made. They don't use as much energy. And so you pay a few extra dollars for them, but in the long run, you save a lot of money because they don't use as much energy. That same Energy Star built houses for a while, that same part of the EPA. And they were really they were like state-of-the-art energy efficient houses. Now, this was in the 60s, so the state-of-the-art wasn't that far ahead, but it was better than a normal house. Then they would find out, people would live in those and they'd say, I thought this was an Energy Star house, but I'm paying a ton for my utilities still. I'm paying what I paid in the last house I lived in. And all the engineers scratched their head and said, well, that can't be. We put tons of insulation in this house, blah, blah, blah. And then they start taking apart the house and studying them. And then they start finding out details. And they found out that the way things were done had as much to do with the materials themselves. So one of the first things they realized was that the insulation was put in pretty haphazardly. They didn't take a lot of care. And we have a unit on insulation, we'll look at that. But they found out, then they said, well, this insulation doesn't fill the bays. It's fiberglass. It may be a couple inches, may settle a couple inches from the top. It may have been put around wires or pipes and not fit real well. And they said, well, okay, that's what we see, and it's not insulating. So why not? What's the problem here? So the engineers started studying it, and they found out that the warm air in your house, you heat the air, right? You live in a cold area, you're heating the air. It goes into the walls through the sheetrock, either at the top or at the bottom. Then when it gets in the wall, it looks for the coldest area. Warm air always seeks the coldest area to go to. And if the coldest area was on the outside of the house, it would go toward the insulation and through the insulation, trying to get to that cold air. and it would slow down in the insulation, which is what you want it to do. You're trying to slow down the warm air. You can't stop warm air from going out, but you can slow it down so that you're not having to cook the air so much in the house. That's what insulation is all about. But what happened was, if the insulation wasn't installed right and there were any kind of channels, air channels that went from the base, from the bottom of the floor of the wall to the top, that warm air went into the wall and went right up those, didn't even go into the insulation, right up, because the top plate's cold. Usually if it's a second floor or a single floor dwelling, the attic's not real insulated right there in the corner of the roofs. And we'll look at all this. And so the insulation just made a beeline to that colder area, because it's just it's just physics, you know. The hot air just says, give me cold air, and that's where it goes. So he said, oh my God, if we don't stop these channels, what would happen is the warm air would go up and out, wouldn't even go through the insulation. So that was the same as having no insulation. And they went, my God, we spent all this money on insulation and it's not even valuable in certain areas where it was put in bad. So they learned that. That's building science. They got engineers to study it, and they studied heat transfer, and they thought, oh, wow, okay, so that's how that works. Well, that's going to mean that we can't have any air channels, any negative spaces in that insulation. It's got to cover every bit of that wall cavity. And so that's what we do now. We have ways to do insulation that does just that. When we had earthquakes in Southern California, the engineers would go in and say, well, how come this building failed? You know, it didn't stay on its foundation. It just totally jumped. So they would find out that hardware wasn't good. And so they find out from damage, natural damage to buildings and buildings that are costly to operate. They started finding all these flaws in the way we're building, and bingo, that was building science. And once they started doing it, they started looking at windows, and they said, well, you know, we've got double pane, which, you know, is good. We've got an airspace, so the heat can't jump that airspace. You know, it's slower to do that. And we've got the glass, and we even got some coating on that reflects the heat back, but they're still not performing well. And they found out that the little spacers that space those double layers were aluminum at first. The heat goes right to the aluminum because it's colder and right out the window. So the spacers in the window became a huge manufacturing issue. So the better companies right away went to fiberglass and things that didn't transmit heat. So everywhere we looked, we started finding, oh my God, these things are failing because of the obvious things. We didn't even think that was an issue. So all that's led to building performance and all the stuff we're going to learn in the class this year. And it's really good for you guys to know if you're going to be builders or carpenters, because this is the future of building. It's just going to keep going that way. And especially with the pressure from global warming and having to really conserve energy and keep our carbon down, this stuff's going to be important. And you know, in the building code, they're making us do this stuff. We don't even have the choice anymore. They're saying, yeah, you know, you've got to, pretty soon, you've got to have a net zero energy house. You can't get, we're not going to let you get any energy from outside. You've just got to figure out a way to save it or manufacture it yourself. If you manufacture it yourself with solar, you're not burning fossil fuel, it's not contributing to greenhouse gas. If your house is so efficient, it doesn't need much energy, you're also not contributing. So the building codes are saying you either have to have solar or you're going to have a net zero energy requirement. So that's the future right there. It's in the codes, at least in California, because we're always ahead. So you got to know this stuff. It's a little more science. For those of you who like science, it'll be enjoyable. For the rest of you, I'll try to make it palatable. Not everybody likes the science. So we first started focusing on tightness, energy efficiency, which often meant the tightness of the structures, no leakage. And then alternate energy, you know, non-fossil fuel energy. Those are the two first moves in this whole building sustainable building performance movement. And we've mostly focused on renewable energy. solar has just really jumped. We've experimented with it, manufacturing's improved it. And I went on a trip to Germany with a bunch of community college teachers about 4 or 5 years ago. And it was on renewable energy. So we went to see solar and wind and what's the stuff in the ground? Whatever that's called, energy in Germany. But we also looked at the tightness and what they're doing to make tight houses. But the tightness took a while to catch on. All the sexiness was in the renewable energy. And so now we're getting more into making houses tight, and therefore the passive home movement, passive house movement from Germany is coming here. And we'll talk about that. We'll see a video on that at some point. But the thing we're not using is we're not reusing materials yet. You know, Carol always comes to our classes, Demo to Design Carol. That's her thing. But she's really been on it for a long time, and it's the third plank that we haven't addressed yet because we're wasting. When you waste a resource, you're wasting all the manufacturing that went into that. You're not just wasting material, you're wasting all the energy it took to make that. And it takes a lot of energy to make things, right? You go to a plant and they use a lot of electricity to make things. So you want to reuse it so it's not embedded with energy. Every time you reuse it, that embedded energy becomes less. You know, from the beginning, you can assign less energy to it. So that's the last thing we're starting to think about. Not enough, but we'll do it. But if you think about building performance, it's how your building performs. Is that a complete thought in itself, how your building performs? Hey, when women talk about boys and men performing, what do they mean? Yeah, we know what they mean, right? It's very specific. So how does a house perform? It can't perform in the same way, I don't think. So the word performance isn't exactly clear when you say building. We know what a building is. So we're talking about houses and their lots. But what does performance mean? So any ideas?
How it fulfills its different functions.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, how it fulfills different functions, because it does have different functions. And that's why even weatherization, they get around to indoor air quality, even though that's not really an energy savings or a typical thing. But they all have to do with, you have needs as human beings, right? And you have needs that your shelters need to give you. And so your shelters perform those needs for you. And if they're not doing it, your shelter is incomplete and not the way it should be. So what are those needs that a shelter gives human beings? We can just brainstorm this, right? I got a smart bunch here.
Covering,
What?
covering, like a roof over your head.
And why do you, okay, a roof you need for what? Weather, right?
Yes.
Yeah, mainly rain, but sun too. But I think mostly people didn't want snow and water in their living room. What else? What other needs does a shelter give?
Warmth.
Warmth, right? Keeps you warm. What else? It could keep you cool too, right? And people have, even before modern times, people have figured out ways to keep their structures cool in hot climates. So cool and heat, rain protection. What else?
Protection from just general, I don't know, general threats that could
Yes. First animals, now people and animals. Unfortunately, it's now people. But yeah, animals. I mean, you know, animals can come into your house and scavenge, and usually the ones that want to kill you, like the top of the food chain animals, they're afraid, they won't come near you. But the lower ones, like mice and rodents, they'll come in and eat all your food and spread disease. So you don't want creatures in your home. So yeah, so protection from creatures and now other people that may be violent. Anything else? How about things in the house that we use, resources?
Places to cook.
Yeah, we need water and we need clean water and sufficient water, right?
Yeah.
Now, when people first started making houses, they probably got their water from a creek and just kept it in a pot. They didn't have plumbing, so that wasn't such an issue. But now that we get our water through plumbing, and that's one of the things a house now provides. So that's part of it too. Indoor air quality, right? That didn't used to be an issue when people first started making houses, but because we live in cities that are so polluted with the air, and because we manufacture things that go into the house that give off toxins, clean air has become an issue. It shouldn't be. Humans should have the sense to not to bring foul stuff into their house, but everything we make is foul now. So indoor air quality is another performance, another need that a house has to give us. So all those ways, besides energy efficiency, houses perform. And those are all things we're going to talk about. They're all part of green building and all part of building performance. And then there's another aspect of performance is who's it performing for? So we've been talking about the homeowner, right? The home user. Yeah. Protection from animals is for the people inside that live there. But is that where it stops? Is that the only people that are involved with the performance of a house?
Natural disasters.
Well, yeah, but I was thinking of more of other people, which is natural disasters are part of that, because we live in a community, right? And so we have to build our houses so they don't contribute to the ill effects of natural disasters, and people do that. They stay out of flood zones, and they used to. They stay out of flood zones and fire zones and stuff. So the performance of your house also affects the community. We're not alone in this. That's the big lesson Americans have to learn, is we're not just alone. We live with other people in other communities. Our freedom is not just our freedom. We don't really exist as individuals. We exist as communities. And the freedom of the community is important. So when people say politically, oh, I just want my freedom, you can't do it. Well, yeah, your freedom stops where my freedom begins. So you can have as much freedom as you want as long as it doesn't take away my freedom, right? I mean, how else can you have a society? So, some people look at individual freedom and some people look at more community welfare. They're kind of different ways of looking at things. And then what else? We got the nation. How does a home deal with a nation? A poor performing home.
Maybe it's if it's a poor performing home, it might be in a less desirable area, or it might bring down the value of an area.
Good points. I wasn't even thinking about those. Right on. So it will continue the division we have, in rich and poor. Also, it can affect our economy, our national economy, in ways. So, but the big thing is beyond the nation into the world. How does a poorly performing house affect the world? I'm going to spank every last one of you unless you come up with the answer to this. Oh no, I can't do that anymore. Okay.
If it's a poorly performed, if it performs poorly, it will eventually be demolished, and then it'll just end up in a landfill.
Yeah, but that's still a local problem, but a worldwide global problem.
It depletes national.
What?
It depletes resources.
Yeah, depletes resources. Good. it uses more resources and energy than it should. What's the problem with using energy, more energy? Where does our energy come from?
Fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels. Right now, we're trying to get out of it, but still fossil fuels dominate. And that's what's causing global warming, right?
Mhm.
So our individual houses contribute their effect to global warming and you see all the crap. 5 years ago, there would be an extreme weather event, and the weather scientists, everyone would say, oh, see, it's global warming. And the weather scientists, well, there's certain anomalies that are built into a system, and periodically we have these overboard, so we can't yet tell. Now, no one is saying that. No one. Every weather scientist says, yes, that was caused by global warming. That was caused by global warming. It's amazing how that science has tightened up and we're more certain. And everything, and have you guys looked at the news lately? What's going on around the world weather-wise? I mean, Tennessee, is it flooding like crazy? Unbelievable stuff going on. So, and we're contributing. Our crappy little leaky houses are contributing our little share to that. So we really owe it to the world. It's not just the world outside the United States or outside of our community. We're suffering here too from the same things. So we owe it to make our houses more energy efficient. We owe it to the global community. So building performance is time is here, just in time for global warming, keeping down fossil fuel. And we've invented, which we'll look at, so many really great things. California is electrifying, right? Like you cannot have, I don't know, it may not be, I think it's coming next year. You cannot put natural gas in a new house. Think of that. We've had natural gas forever here. California's been so cheap. It's been practically free. When I was a kid, it was almost free. I mean, there was no choice. You heat it with natural gas. We're on the point of not allowing any new natural gas and going all electric. That's a huge change, and we'll look at that too. I've just got a bunch of videos on that. So just to follow the code, we've got to learn more about electrifying our houses completely. Big change. And lastly, and then we'll move on to something else. When you build a house and you do it in a jurisdiction, you go to a building department. Now, not everybody does that, especially in the country, but not everybody even in the city does that. But if you go to a building department, which you're supposed to legally, but people, get away with it. Building performance is one of the ways now it's built into the way you apply for a permit. Because it used to be, what's it called? The opposite. God, I forget these words. It used to be that they said they would give the code would say you have to have R19 in a wall. That's what they'd say. And so when you built it, you put R19, and if the inspector came and you had R13, he'd say, you're either going to put solid insulation outside, or you're going to rip that out and put a thicker wall. That's not legal. So, but then they figured out there were so many new ideas for saving energy, new inventions, new products, that the building code the inspectors couldn't keep up with all the new information. So they finally said, look, now you have to go to a specialty inspector, a private inspector that you pay money to. And he or she's going to look at all these new ideas that are cutting edge, and they're going to run you through this test and see if those ideas equal the ideas we have, the R19 in the wall. So for a lot of things, you have to get a building performance expert that'll write off your innovative insulation, shell sealing, appliance use, electrification, all that. So you have building performance professionals, and the actual code, the code's written. It'll often have two ways of doing things. God, I can't remember the word. The way that has the standards, and then the building performance way, which is an alternate that you have to get an outside person to confirm and write up for you. So it's even part of the building code. So there's no getting out of building performance as builders. Okay, any questions? So I have one last thing. It's 7:30. I have I don't know how long it's probably a 20-minute video I want you to look at. Would you like to take a break now, like a 10-minute break, and then look at the 20-minute video and go home? Or you just want to start the video and go through and get out of here?
I'd be down to just start it.
Can we just start it? The thing about doing it online is if you get tired, you can sort of zone out, or you can go get a beer, or you can, so you kind of take little breaks along the way. I know, because I can't hear you after a while. That's okay. That's human nature. So, but let's do that. Okay, let me flip this on. And it won't be me talking. It'll be a professional, another kind of professional. These are really great movies that this group, did I talk about that? Because the code's going that way, the government wants people to be educated, and they're worried about schools not educating and contractors not being educated for all this new building performance. So these green sustainability nonprofits are being used by the government, by grants, to provide free training for contractors, architects, educators. So I was offered to do these webinars. They were free. So all summer I've been taking, I think I took 8 or 9 of them. And they had videos and slideshows from them. And they brought all this building performance up to date. So they're really great. So you don't have to rely on my old ways, because I'm not in the field. I don't know what they're using, but these are houses that are being built, and people that are doing it. So that's going to really make this class better. So let me get that video going here. Oh, they want a passcode. Why do they do that to me? Because they can. But I just so happen to have the passcode. Wrong passcode. Uh-oh. Oh, great. Oh, yeah. So the government doesn't do, the utilities have to set aside some of the money you pay them for your electricity into sustainable educational efforts. So your utility buddies are paying for this. Great, huh?
Floors that can meet the growing demand of energy efficient, high performance buildings. Next slide.
Tri-County
Thank
REN.
you. 3C REN currently offers 3 programs: Energy Code Connect, building performance training, and home energy savings. Next slide, please. Energy Code Connect serves all building professionals, including the public and private sectors.
So this is free advice you can
Energy
get.
Code Connect offers 3 distinct
from this-
services.
from
Energy
these
Code Coach,
people.
which
Sure,
is an
huh?
over-the-counter on phone, online, and over-the-counter and in the field service to
You
help
can all
building
see this, right?
professionals navigate the complex, ever-changing
And hear it
energy
okay?
code training, which is similar to today's, but this one focuses more on addressing the California Energy Code and green building standards, and regional forums that provide opportunity to explore all aspects of the California Energy Code that are relevant to critical policy facing our region. Next slide, please. The Building Performance Training Program serves current prospect building professionals from designers and engineers to contractors and real estate professionals. BPT offers
what about
expert
school
instruction
teachers?
covering
Come on.
technical skills related to
God.
building science for high performance buildings like passive house design and heat pump technologies, and soft skills like sales to help grow your business. BPT equips workers to thrive in an evolving industry. Next slide. And currently, our home energy savings program has been paused during COVID. Once we relaunch, the program will offer free and discounted home upgrades like smart thermostats and heat pump water heaters, and we'll be launching a multi-family program. In the meantime, the home energy savings program is currently offering free home energy saving toolkits that can be checked out in our partner libraries. Please feel free to go check out our website to see what libraries are participating in that. These toolkits provide tools and supplies that you will need to upgrade your home, along with easy to follow instructions for projects like swapping light bulbs for LEDs and installing weather stripping.
How
So without
hard is it to
further ado,
swap a
I'd
light
like to
bulb?
pass it along to Michelle to introduce today's learning objectives and our instructors. Thank you.
Thanks, Itzel. Hi, everyone.
So Michelle used to be a student at school. She took this class in the green building. Now she's an energy consultant.
My name is Michelle Zimney. I'm a senior sustainability consultant at InBalance Green Consulting. We're delighted to have everybody on the call today. Our instructors, as Itzel mentioned, are part of our InBalance team. We'll have Jennifer Rennick, who is a certified energy analyst, as well as a licensed architect here in California. And then the other part of our A team is
Okay, we don't
Mike
need it.
Horgan,
Yeah.
licensed contractor, as well as certified passive house designer. They bring a wealth of information and expertise to today's topic. So we're really excited to have them for today's presentation. I know some of you may be architects or looking for continuing education relevant for everyone. We'll also be making time at the end of today's presentation for dedicated to questions.
The photos and videos and data are from buildings we are currently working on right now. It's also important to say this is, Jennifer and I probably have a combined 5 decades of knowledge, even though it's hard for us to say. No, there's always more to learn, so we don't think we're super smart, but stroke of the idea that there are many out there, and some of them work with systems and some of them play nice with others, and some don't. I know like Steve Mann's on here, and Steve and I could probably say, and
I try to cut out the
end up
gossip.
in conversations talking about 14-inch TJI trusses added to the outside of a 2x6 wall and filling those TJIs with dense packed cellulose. And now we've got an R65 or an R70 wall. We don't really need that in California. And that's a big turnoff for builders and architects when you start hearing, hey, you've got to add 14-inch TJI Larson truss systems to the outside of your houses. We don't. And a lot of other clients, that is what it takes to get to a high performance building. We don't have to do that. But what we are talking about here is just a little step up in some of the detailing that we do, some of the practices that we have, some of the design that we have for a gigantic result in what we end up calling a higher performance. The houses and the buildings that we're talking about here would just be kind of normal houses in Maine or Massachusetts. But here in California, especially on the Central Coast, it's a high performance home. There are a few different metrics, measurements, pathways, methods of achieving and measuring high performance homes. Living Future, LEED, Passive House. I've done FIAS and
We've got a whole unit on this toward the end, so don't worry about
PHI training. I think
remembering
there's
it all.
Michelle's in the PHI training right now that 3C Rent is offering to the Central Coast AIA members or 3C Rent members. I'm not sure. Actually, we're getting a lot of calls, a lot of messages and emails every day from people on that. So it's awesome. The point is that all of these are ways of measuring the performance of a home that is above code compliant. And we're hoping that everyone that's in this workshop here today is cognizant of the fact that code compliant is, legal. It means you're not going to go to jail for building a house to that level. It doesn't necessarily mean that the house is going to be comfortable. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be healthy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be efficient energy-wise or economically wise. It is just a baseline of what is legal to call a shelter in California or anywhere in America. So we're hoping that all of you are kind of trying to go above code compliant, and the things we'll talk about today are small measures that help us get there.
Okay, so with that, I'm gonna say, well, wait a minute. The California Energy Code has been trying to do better than just legal. But those of you who know me, I'm like really into the energy code. So, but it did start out in 1978. The idea was to have part of the building code address the energy use that goes into buildings. So in the 70s, we started to realize that buildings use a lot of energy. So in California, the building part, the energy code part of the building code has been stepping us up to better and better performance, with the ultimate goal of getting to 100% carbon-free electric generation, and with that, all the buildings going all electric. Nearly all the buildings all electric. There's existing building stock out there, but the new construction would be able to take advantage of a better carbon-free electric energy grid. And so with keeping that in mind, a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about today is techniques and ways of building your building better so that it will be easier to rely on electricity and electricity generation from renewable.
So can everybody hear me?
Yep.
So I'm gonna gloss these videos here and there. So I want you to look at this zone map of the different climate zones in California. And we're right along here, right? There's Point Conception, so Gaviotas, this is Santa Barbara. So South County is in 6, zone 6, and probably North County is in 5, because Lompoc and Santa Maria are right there. So 5 and 6 are our zones. When you use the building code, it's important. Sometimes you'll have to follow the requirements for your particular zone.
And a cleaner energy grid. Today in particular, we're gonna mostly focus on the residential and small commercial scale buildings, low-rise buildings. And California is made up of a lot of different microclimate zones, but today the techniques we're going to talk about really is just going to be focusing on our climate zones that we have on the Central Coast for Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and Ventura counties. Okay, and with that, Mike's going to take us into sort of the pillars of higher performance building.
So some of you might recognize that this pie chart here are the 5 pillars of Passive House. And we're not going into a Passive House workshop here, but anybody can benefit from taking that workshop and learning some of those principles and applying them, if not in spades, in bits and pieces to your own projects. We've found through practice here that if you're not going to go for Passive House, there are 3 other main principles that really can push you over the edge of just what's a kind of blah code compliant building to something that's much higher performing in our region. So the first would be paying attention to your envelope enclosure. We say, don't leave your envelope enclosure to be verified in the field. If you're an architect here, you should verify that on your drawings, because if you leave that to be verified in field by a builder or a subcontractor, a trade partner of your general contractor, it will be value engineered out in the field. And right from the get-go, you've put yourself at a disadvantage. So architects can take control of that right from the beginning. The second principle we've noticed that really can make a gigantic difference here is the use of strategic windows. where you put them, how they operate, the kinds of windows that you're using. Thermally broken windows make a gigantic difference. We do have images in other workshops where we show the difference between a thermally broken window and a non-thermally broken window in California, and how one of them will transfer nearly 100-degree heat into a home or a building, even at 8 o'clock at night. So windows make a gigantic difference here. And the last of the three main principles we found that makes a big difference is introducing balanced ventilation. So we've tackled the envelope enclosure. We're looking at what kinds of windows we're using, how we're using them, how they operate. And then we're introducing balanced ventilation and not relying on a leaky envelope and a whole house fan to pull air from who knows where, uncontrolled air infiltration into the house. We want to take control of that ventilation in our homes. So getting into the envelope enclosure, sometimes it's called the envelope, sometimes it's called the enclosure. Envelopes are used for mail, enclosures are used
How
for
about
homes.
shell?
I think it's funny to put a manila envelope with a stack of $100 bills in it because this is California and we're talking about construction, and we're particularly right now, the envelopes that are being passed back and forth are full of cash because it's pretty expensive right now. But regardless of the language you use, envelope, enclosure, we're just going to use envelope enclosure and use them interchangeably. You want that to be weather and watertight, of course, no leaks, no lawyers. Airtight, so outside stays out, inside stays in, and the two should not meet unintended, but it's okay if they meet intended. So you want to take control of that, and that's something we've not done in the past. Thermally tight, no paths, no bridges, no highways. So that's what we're talking about with good windows, thermally broken windows. So when your sun is beating down on the exterior of your window and that window frame is heating up to 110, 120 degrees, that heat's not transferring to the inside of the building. The inside of the building should stay the same ambient temperature that your habitants want it to be. So how do you start that? How can architects start that? This, I mean, this is basic. This is when someone says to you in elementary school, draw me a home. This is pretty much the drawing that you have. And regardless of how complicated it gets, if it's Frank Gehry, you know, the Seattle Museum, the first time I visited, buckets catching rain everywhere, you can still do this red line test and make sure that your envelope is continuous. So take a red pen, take a red marker, and you should be able to go around the building regardless of the shape and make that envelope continuous. And whether that's through your membranes and tapes or painted on products, it doesn't matter. The idea is to have it be continuous. Red line test through an elementary building. Doesn't matter what kind of building it is. If it's slab on grade, if it's a crawl space, so that is a 100% continuous vapor barrier. Continuous, continuous, continuous. Seems to be how most of the work we see is done. So this is a continuous vapor barrier underneath our concrete. That doesn't mean pieces of plastic strewn around and then sand thrown on top of it. This is a home I'm building, and it's just 2 layers, 2 full rolls rolled out, taped at all the seams, taped at all the penetrations, taped at all the stub outs, masticed around the edges of our footings, so that is a 100% continuous vapor barrier. Continuous, continuous, continuous. And then we'll work our way up on the walls with our sheathing and our wall membranes. I like to use a membrane on the roof that continues my wall membrane, continues my enclosure up from the wall right over my framing.
I'm going
entire
to go through some of this fast because we're going to study it in detail.
Unwanted water condensation happening inside the construction assembly. And we want to control where and when we get the outside air inside and when we have our inside air be pushed outside. So the top diagram is just an example of a situation that happens in our region all the time when we have wind. So the big blue arrows represent wind blowing up against a house, a typical house that's leaky. So on the windward side, we have a lot of positive pressure, and it pushes unwanted air through the cracks around the windows, at the sill plates. And on the leeward side of the house, we end up with negative pressurization, a lot of wind eddies, which actually, pulls the air, sucks the air from inside the house through our wall assemblies in order to equalize the pressure, that negative pressurization. So the reason I mention it for our climate zone is because a lot of our homes have at least 50% relative humidity inside the air, sometimes up to 60%, pretty easy. Our outside air might be less moist. It could be a lower relative humidity, but the inside usually tends to build up humidity. And what that little chart down on the bottom says is that if you have a relative humidity of 50% and the inside air temperature in our house is 70 degrees, which is pretty typical, that air moving through your wall assembly would have to hit a temperature of only 50 degrees Fahrenheit before it starts to condense. And a lot of times, especially North County of San Luis Obispo, where I live, and in inland counties of Santa Barbara and Ventura, we have easily times in the winter where we've got wind loading, the walls are leaky, and the outdoor temperature is easily below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So every place that wind or the air gets pulled through our wall assemblies, roof assemblies, floor assemblies, that's a place for potential.
This is fairly typical construction in California. This is a higher performance home that I'm building. So we're really, we're kind of on top of it and paying attention to little things. But even still, typical framing here leaves a gap where you'd have stub outs. We're not gonna use a hole saw and cut our sill plate with a hole saw and strategically stand our wall up and then lower it down on top of our stub out. So framers will just cut out our sill plates here, and there's a big gap left. And now our plywood sits above our slab so that it doesn't get wet, and it often never gets sealed. So you've got about anywhere between 1/4 inch and 3/4 inch gap behind a stub out in a kitchen. That's just a big hole for air to move through. I think this is just about a minute long here. We'll talk through this. I mean, in a typical construction, you'd have, and generally that's just left. Different temperature air coming into the home. Jennifer's talking about where we have that different. We're trying to avoid those cracks, but when we don't, that moisture is coming into our house and moving through our walls, through all the various channels. So it actually considers this a poor practice, and they recommend not doing this in the right mastic or thin set. It starts to interact with moisture. Watertight, airtight. We're really trying to go for weather durable, not beating nature, working with nature, build assemblies that can dry out. If they do get wet for some reason, they're able to work with that and dry out over time.
I'm skipping around because there's no sense hearing those details before we study it in more detail. This is just an overview, but they've switched to the outside, and this is the siding they have on the outside. And now it's recommended that you put strips to let air flow behind the siding in case any water gets in. It can drip down, and also air can come in and evaporate it. So we'll talk about that later.
Section for every project that we put together usually takes a few hours, and you might think it is a waste of time. You could just tell people how to do this, but this is actually, and they were really into it. So they became really vested in understanding how this all went together and having the mock-ups on site. So we taught these guys pretty quickly how to, run an adhesive around the footing and then drape the membrane down the side of the sheathing and attach it to the foundation. And it all made a lot of sense, and they picked up on it in seconds. So hopefully they'll take it to the next practice as well.
Mike, I've got a quick question to follow up on that mock-up slide.
Sure.
Patrick was asking about, go forward
It's
one.
my
Oh,
question.
that's right. if water gets in behind the siding, based on this structure, it's going to hit the insulation. If it's not protected by Tyvek, what's your thinking on that? Is it going to deteriorate the insulation?
Yeah, depends on the whole system that you're using. Depends on what kind of insulation you're using. And this particular project, I mean, fully honest, this is a wood fiber insulation that we're using. This particular piece was not used. We used another line of this brand that it has a little bit of paraffin wax in it, so it does have water resistance. And we've tested it when we got 11 inch.
Okay.
Always a little.
See, even the best
Helps
models
answer
are
it.
sometimes not right.
Okay, why is this important? Why is this? We're back to our, we're working our way up the wall. And Michelle, I'm keeping an eye on time, so thanks. Does this work? Is this really a necessity? So what we've done is we've taught our framing crew how to bring that membrane down and adhere it to our footing. And then Jennifer and I went back and actually tested the efficacy of how well this worked. And all we did was pile up a bunch of sawdust inside, right at the edge of the sill plate. And now right in front of Jennifer, she's in the primary bathroom here. So we've got a few vent stacks coming out of the sill plate. So, I mean, it's a goofy video, but it really does show how well this works. You know, that's a Makita cordless leaf blower on full blast, trying to push through this vent stack right here, which has a 1/2 inch gap in the plywood and only a membrane covering that gap. But that membrane sealed to the footing. So does it work? Yes. So how the mock-ups worked, the importance of the mock-up. The mock-up that day.
Hey, Mike was just showing a line of brands, and we kind of have this motto like stay in your swim lane, we call it, because there's certain chemical compatibilities with certain brands, certain things. It's really thick like a putty.
Was that all of the things we were consulting on and all of the things the homeowners wanted were dependent on a non-leaky envelope, on controlling the leakage of the envelope. And that step was skipped completely and no one was ever held accountable for it. So they've got this really nice HRV system. They've got heat pump heating and cooling. They've got PV, but they've got gigantic holes in the building envelope all over the place. And none of them have been sealed or had any attention paid to them. So they've missed a gigantic importance.
Keep going,
and
I'll be quiet.
This is just an example of real life mock-ups. If you're architects listening in, you want to do digital mock-ups. A 10-year-old taught me how to use the Procreate app to do digital mock-ups and show sequencing. And I actually pulled this out on the job site to show other members of the framing crew how it went together. And I put this together in about an hour through a digital app. And it was just, the purpose was showing step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 project. And I think this next video, which isn't very long,
it's a quick
will show the
follow-up
efficacy
video.
of this
We're
exterior
all wrapped
insulation
now,
that we're using.
and
Any
this wood
exterior
fiber board's
insulation.
been outside the house for about a week.
And stopping heat transfer moving through.
Performance buildings in general is windows and the strategic placement of windows. So I'm going to give, again, just a high overview and then touch on daylight and views and how important the daylight is for psychological well-being. So we understand that part of good design, I'm an architect, I love windows, I want lots of windows. The thing that's become really important is sound transmission class of windows and wall assemblies, especially if you're going to be building near freeways and highways. So in case you
So sounds become another aspect of window performance, sound protection. It's interesting, huh? We've just sort of lived with all the horrible sounds over the years, and now we're starting to do something about it.
and they do help.
So these
mitigate
are the things
sound
that are
transfer.
And they're cost competitive.
transfer
You know,
heat
And
right
they're
here.
cost
5 years
competitive.
ago, especially 10 years ago, getting these triple pane windows from Europe, because they weren't even made in America at that point. You know, you really had to be an early adopter. Now, you know, compare. We got a dozen. We usually get
and gives kind of an upper limit on that U factor. So now in California, they're made out of fiberglass and other thermally broken materials. Ventilation, and by balanced ventilation house, meaning all.
We'll just skip through this a little bit. We have units on each of
You get
these.
an
So
idea of how big it is. You know, one person can.
So very efficient way.
A couple decades now, and code is kind of catching up to those ideas. And I don't know, I feel like Jennifer's been at this for a lot longer, and now she's able to kind of say, see, I told you we were right, you know, and that's kind of being proven true that our buildings and our homes play a huge aspect in the health of the entire planet and the environment, the human and planetary environment. So largely we were talking about the operational aspects, but now that we've taken care of that, and we've taught all of you how to build these, you know, zero energy, low operational carbon homes. You know, this is a typical building with a fairly high operational carbon footprint, and that's a slice of the pie. That's what is called the embodied carbon, which is the carbon that goes into making our materials, transporting our materials, the kinds of materials that we use. Well, now that we've, you know, lowered that operational carbon, not as low as we can, but we're getting better. Now our embodied slice of the pie is a lot bigger. So it's time to start shifting our focus. We're really going to jump past this operational carbon, lowering that aspect because it's fairly easy. And now focus is probably going to turn towards our operational carbon footprints, and it really needs to. So thinking about the materials that we use, this is from Chris Magwood.
So I'll cut through this because we'll study it later. But not only is insulation got its effectiveness for holding heat, stopping heat flow, but now we're rating it according to how much energy it takes to make that insulation. So if we use tons of energy to make an insulation that's pretty good, we've still lost a lot of that energy in the embodied part of it. So we're finally realizing, oh yeah, we got to think about how it's made also. So slowly but surely, we're getting all the details of energy savings, whether it's in how it's manufactured, what materials are used, and how it's used on the building itself. Okay, we can skip the questions. Isn't that great? So I just wanted to give you kind of an overview. I didn't want to have you guys have to understand and remember all the details because they're going to take more than but we're going to have more than a few seconds. We're going to have a unit on almost each of those things, and we'll talk about each of them in detail. And none of it's that hard. It's just a lot more involved than it used to be, but it's all things we can understand. And I try to break most of it down into pretty simple science. Any questions about the stuff tonight? That guy's a pretty interesting builder, the guy who gave that movie. He's from Massachusetts and he lives in San Francisco part-time, and he's doing a lot of building down here. He's got a lot of good ideas. And then the architect is a Rennick. She's a sustainability building performance oriented architect. So her ideas are good too. So, and they're building buildings in this area. So it's really relevant stuff. And probably you guys will be pretty amazed at some of the stuff, you know, you just haven't seen it or not used to it. So no questions? So,
I have one.
Oh yeah, good.
So at the beginning of the class, you said that this was one of the better courses to be teaching online.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff do we miss out on by being online though?
Okay, so when I was talking about the suggested better ways of insulating walls, we would have a wall and we would insulate it. That particularly doesn't take, you can do that by video. A lot of the videos I'll show are YouTubes of people actually doing it, not just people talking about it, but builders doing it. So that's a little closer to us actually doing it. Some of the things that won't matter. Another one is there's a diagnostic test to see how much your house is leaking. It's called a blower door test. And you put a frame into a doorway and it's got a fan on it. And the fan's got a little computer. And what the fan does is it blows as hard as it takes to keep the air balanced, the air that's leaking, to keep the same amount of air coming in. And then you record and you can digitalize that air leakage. So I run through that with everybody at the school. We take apart the kit, we put it up, and it's possible we could do one or two at school things along the way. Not everybody's here in this area, so it would be most of us, but not all of us. If you wanted that, we could show the blower door thing, and then I could ask, hey, would you guys like to go further and actually do it yourselves, or is this enough for now? So let's do it that way. But it's just those few things. Most of the stuff's a lot of information, and you can see it's like now we have you know what a air conditioning system, how it works. It's got a condenser, and what it does is it sucks cold air out of the ambient air. Instead of taking a fuel, like same thing with heating, instead of taking a fuel and making heat, you can suck the heat that's in air. You can take the difference in the heat from one medium to another, suck it out and use it. It's an incredibly sophisticated thing. Refrigerators use it and air conditioners use it. And now they've realized, well, hell, we can get hot water heaters to use it. And we can put heaters on the wall in many places, these little cheap heaters that are heat pumps, what they call them. And that's totally reformed HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And so that stuff you can just see, it's easy just to see those guys using it on the videos. So most of that stuff you can see on the video. I think you can't learn to do the blower door in one demonstration in a class. You get a little closer to it. And I always made the offer, and I'm not going to be here forever, but I always made the offer to students, if they want to take a training like BPI, Building Performance Institute, has a training where you learn a lot of these techniques, and they test you on it. And to pass the class, you have to do a blower door test and other things in a certain amount of time. So I tell students, if they are going to do that kind of training and they want to practice it at school, I would do that with them so they could learn it, because you want to be able just to do it unconsciously and not spend a lot of time on it. It's not that hard, but it takes a little bit of practice. So I would do that between now and June when I'll be here, but I could also tell the new teachers to make that available. So, it's relative how much you learn by doing some of these things in person, but when it's an in-person class, we just do it because we're there. So.
And Zach, you'll miss Patrick's presence by not having in-person classes. That's what really makes them.
So, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Partly, I'm glad that we're doing it online. I originally had this in person, and then the school wanted the board to make vaccination mandatory, the Santa Barbara College Board. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. And the faculty senate and all the groups at school went bananas. And they fired the president. They made the president of the school quit. He also wanted to leave it up to the individual students. But this variant that's coming, this Delta, is so communicable that it's not like it was with the other variants. I had class at the beginning of the summer and in spring in person. because the variant wasn't that bad and I could socially distance and we all wore masks. But this variant's a lot worse. And college kids traditionally haven't been getting vaccinated. They're a segment of population that's been holding out. Then the school reversed it. So I went it all online because I didn't want to get infected. It's bad if an old person, I'm 75. If I get infected, it's not good. And so I thought, well, I'll be on the safe side. I'll do it online. And then the school board reversed it. So some people are doing in-person classes, but so it's been kind of confusing, but I think I'm still wise to do that. But if things get better, or I realize that the majority of the class is vaccinated toward the end of the class, maybe we can take a couple of sessions at school. Okay, we'll see how it goes. You guys have to. I mean, I don't know if they're checking for your things, but now you don't have to have it for online, right? Or do you, just to even attend?
You can have a medical excuse or religious,
A religious
exemption.
excuse.
Yeah, but then you have to wear a mask all the time, even outside, just to come on campus. You have to wear a mask.
But if you're doing it online, do you have to have the vaccination?
I don't think so.
It's interesting, huh?
Yeah, just to go on campus.
I mean, usually you have mixed classes, so you'll be doing some on campus and you need to get vaccinated for those. But so I'm just going to say this one thing and then we'll go. The vaccination is really important. The religious and what was the other one?
Medical.
Oh yeah, medical. The religious and medical exemptions are legitimate. I mean, if people have a religion that doesn't do vaccinating, that's their business. The problem is, like we talked about before, there's freedom of religion. So you can practice your religion, which means not taking the vaccine. But when that freedom impinges on my freedom to stay alive, because I might get infected by you having the vaccine because your religion doesn't allow you to, or wants you not to have it, you see the conflict there? It's kind of a real problem. And so that's why we separate religion and state in this country. So that kind of stuff doesn't happen. You know, people have to get vaccinated. I mean, they make exceptions, but they could say, no, there's no exception. You stay home or you do things online, but you can't come to school, period, unless you're vaccinated. They could go that far, and they have in the past. So it's not a simple issue. But the thing that if by not, like probably most of you young guys, most of you guys are young, not all of us, but a lot of you are young and you look pretty healthy from what I can see. And even if you got infected, it probably wouldn't kill you. It might not even hospitalize you. But this new variant is very spreadable. And you could not even have symptoms. This is the worst part, or light symptoms, and have the bacteria, have the virus, and pass it on, not even knowing you have it, and then give it to someone that's vulnerable, like an old person or somebody in your family that's got diabetes, and then they would get seriously sick and may die. So it's not you guys we're worried about. It's us. It's us and your family and community members that can't afford to get it. So you guys can think, you college level, I'm lumping you all together for right now. You can think, well, you know, hell, I'll get by. Yeah, that's probably true, but it's not a matter of that. It's a matter of looking out for other people in your community. And I really believe strongly in community, and I think that we all owe certain things to the community. You know, we have our freedoms and our responsibilities to community, and one of them is not to make anybody in the community sick to the point of dying. And so I really think everybody should get, barring religious and medical reasons, should get vaccinated for, just because it's a communal it's a responsibility that goes with that freedom. So that's my political speech for the night. I think it's pretty sound, but you know, you guys all have your own minds. But the other thing is, if you don't get vaccinated and we don't get herd immunity sometime fairly soon, and right now we're nowhere near it, it's back worse. The longer you have the COVID out there, what it does is it mutates constantly. Some of those mutations make it harder for us to kill the disease. And those mutations end up being the ones that survive because we can't wipe them out as much. So all the time we wait, the nastier variants are going to come. That's just biology. So the whole reason to get the vaccines originally, everybody to herd immunity, is that the vaccine would just die, that initial variant, which wasn't that serious. But if we're going to take another year or two to vaccinate this country and the world, we're going to see a lot of new variants, some of which aren't going to be like Delta, which is bad, but our vaccines still work for it. There's going to come a time, and we don't know when that is, that the variant's not going to work with the vaccines. It's just going to be enough different. And they're not smart. They're not living things, viruses. All they do is, it's just stimulus response. When we figure out a way to kill them, if something mutates and it gets around that just by chance, those are the ones that multiply because nothing's killing them. It's got nothing to do with, they don't think or anything about it. It's just numbers, So the whole thing's a number game, and you have to be aware of it. I wish we were more educated about that when we go through our elementary and high school, because it's pretty straightforward and simple if you understand it. So, I'm 75. I've got 5 to 10 years left in my life. There's traveling I wanted to do next summer. I'm not going anywhere if this thing's still like this. And the rest of the world isn't vaccinated. I can't go anywhere. And the industrial countries should have sent vaccine to the rest of the world, because the variants are going to start in Africa and India and places where they can't get a grip on it. And they're going to come here because we can't stop things from entering our borders. We have so many Indian Americans and African Americans that go back and forth. If there's a variant there, it's going to get here. It's just not stoppable. We know this. So the whole world's got to reach herd immunity before it's going to be safe. I mean, and I'm kind of pissed because I don't have a lifetime. You guys can wait 5 years and then do all your traveling, willy-nilly, wherever you want to go. I don't have that time. I don't want to all of a sudden have the last 10 years of my life totally closed off because a bunch of people didn't want to get vaccines, or we just were slothful about giving vaccines to the rest of the world. So that's why some people are uptight about it, because it affects their life more than it does others. It probably doesn't affect many of your lives because you're young and healthy. So, but just I'm representing one of the other points of view. So that's all I'm going to say about that. The decisions are in your court now. Okay. So
Yeah.
thanks for the class. I'm going to ask you stuff because it helps to interact with you, questions, and you did great today. And I'm going to try to make it a little more question and answer than me just going on. Today I had to get a lot of stuff established, but a lot of you are builders and will have natural questions coming out of the stuff we look at. And if you're not a builder or just entering it, then you might get confused easier and want to ask questions too. So any last minute questions before we call it a? Did we record this?
Yeah,
It's recording.
Recording
Recording now?
Yeah, it's been on.
Oh, it is. Okay, great. The symbols down there are confusing. To an old farter who doesn't understand computers. Yeah. Yeah. Was there a question?
Did you take roll?
Great. That's a good question. I'm notorious for forgetting roll because I don't really believe in it, but the school believes in it. Okay, Miguel.
Here.
Miguel Barbosa, you were here, right?
Yeah, I'm
I
still
think he
here.
was here. Jesus Breda?
Here.
Oh, yeah. Alec was here. Lewis was here. Jack is one of those guys who comes and goes. I'll give him credit tonight. Dylan Forbes. Okay. Adair was here. Zach was here. Eric was here. Dylan Mitchell was here. Jocelyn, I guess, did she show up? I assume that's a woman, right, Jocelyn? Joel Santos was here, Michael Silva was here, Jose Nunez was here, John Tapia was here, and Gustav was here. Okay, you guys, way to go. Thanks for attending. And read for next week, read the stuff in the assignment page and do the blog and do the journal. Okay.
Yep.
And I will see you all in a week, 6 o'clock.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. See you
Thanks,
guys.
Patrick.
Thank you.
All right. See you next week.
So Patrick, if things start getting a little better, you'd feel comfortable about doing a couple in-person classes?
Yeah. I mean, I'll have to make that judgment, but you know, when we were, you know, like John knows, when we were John's left, and well, you know, when we had the class, I opened all the windows, I had the air purifier. The blower door closes the door on us, but we can do it for a few seconds, you know. That one's kind of fun because you see the kit and how it fits together, and that's kind of cool.
And then you were talking about putting some insulation in or something.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
not as necessary, but we can maybe combine several things,
Right.
you know, because it's a 3-hour session. So
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome if we could do
yeah. So each time we do it online, you tell me, if Guy, that would really be great to see that in person to understand it. And then
Okay.
I'll write that down and we'll see if we can fit it in. We'll do it that way.
Cool. Well, keep your head up, man. Hopefully we have you know, the next 15 years ahead of us. We'll see.
Well, I mean, I tell you, the news, I mean, I like to watch it because I think it's important, but it is pretty freaking gloomy out there right now.
Oh, that variant spreading like across the country.
Well, that's just a fraction of the news. You've got
It's insane. Yeah.
You've got the you know, Afghanistan, you've got the Cold War with China and Russia, you've got global warming. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
I can't even watch that stuff. I take my
I
hat
know.
off to you that you're even able to watch it.
I know. Well, I write about it, so I have to kind of keep up with it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. No, I know, and I have to research it to write about it, and that's depressing too.
Yeah, I can't even think about it. It's too
Yeah.
empowering.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you're young, you want to be positive and look at the world as beautiful and hopeful, you know? So I totally understand that. I was, in the 60s generation. That's all we did.
Yeah.
I still think the
Hey,
world is
Frederick.
beautiful. Yeah.
Do you know if Rodney's doing his class in person or is it also online?
His math one, I think, is in person, and he's taking the lab part of Jim's 110 class, and I think that's in person too.
Okay.
But you can go. Do you know where those things are listed on the school website?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right. Everybody says that. Nobody goes to that. How many years?
John, are you trying not to drive? Is that why you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it was online or if I have to show up in person.
I think you can take it online.
He's going to record it because Michael from Sacramento's got to do these last few classes. So you might be able to work out a compromise where you go a little bit at a time and then see the recording the rest. We're pretty easy. We're pretty easy, Rodney and I are. I don't know about Jim, but it's Rodney's classes you're thinking about. So yeah, try it out on.
Yeah. So I have it on my schedule, but I work in Santa Barbara, so I'll stop in on Thursday and then kind of work something out with him.
Yeah, we're flexible, because the math really doesn't matter, right?
Right.
I taught that online twice now, and it's fine.
Just say you're worried about exposure.
What's that?
I said just say you're worried about exposure.
No, I'm fully vaccinated.
Yeah, but still, that's the thing. I mean,
yeah,
all they're doing every night is showing all the people that are vaccinated that got the breakthrough.
That's true.
I know, it's fucking horrible.
So is Wake Campus doing the check-in booth thing with the wristbands and all that, like Wake Campus is doing?
Yeah, so that's another thing. When you go to Rodney's classes, you got to go to room 1. It's at the front of the school where that little kiosk is.
And check
Mhm.
in.
and check in, and they give you a wristband. And you should do your healthy
Healthy
roster thing before you get there probably, and have it on your phone ready to show them. It'll expedite your having to go through a lot.
What a pain. I got to do that. I got an 8 a.m. class tomorrow. Now I have to go to campus like a half an hour early to.
I know.
Go to work on campus.
It'll keep us healthy though. Well,
Yeah.
they'll understand the first day. Everybody will be late because they'll be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Well, have a good night, guys.
Yeah. Okay. You done? Is that it, John? You okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. You too, Lewis.
All right, guys. See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.